I'd like to start the meeting of the Leavenworth Board of County Commissioners and like to invite everyone to stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the record, all three commissioners are present. I'd like to open the public comment portion of the meeting. Anyone from the public wishing to speak, please come forward, state your name and address. Mr. Flint.
I'll start out on a good note, so I finish up different. A guy by the name of Roy Holland.
Any relation to Bob?
Yeah, I think it was, wasn't he, Bob?
I think he was.
He was 92 and Betty was 97. They were a member of the Frontier Board. And most people don't get that. I try to read something about everything. Sheriff Department, EMS, everybody. Okay, Lewis Klemp, 1816 Pine Ridge Drive. Still keeping that same address. God bless that woman.
Louis, you know what? Somebody asked my address the other day and I almost gave them yours.
Bob, hey, I noticed there's been a pickup at my house when I'm flying over. Yeah.
What's for supper tonight?
That's an old airline joke. The newspaper. And I even brought you, gentlemen, conflict of interest. And I guess I should have read all 4 articles. That may have helped. I noticed that it was talking about placed a hold on 3 email accounts. Nobody said who it was. Commissioners had voted beginning in May to journal or archive. I finally got the definition of that. There has to be some reason why, some intelligent reason. I'm sure there's a reason. There's a reason for everything, but not an intelligent reason. I don't know how many of you listen to the federal news, because most of it isn't in the news anyway. You got to listen to a conservative program. Everybody's going to say, "Oh my God, he listens to Fox." Yeah, I listen to Fox at 8 and 9 o'clock. Lindsey Graham. Everybody know Lindsey Graham, Senator? North Carolina, South Carolina. Well, from Carolinas, doesn't matter. They'll disagree with that, it does matter. And he wrote a letter to the FBI, the NSA, and the CIA asking if there was any incidental collection of him being surveyed or gone after because of his conversation with probably some Russian or who knows who. And they had this bureaucrat out there who was, I think he was NSA. I don't think it was the other 2. And he said, "Well, Mr. Lindsey, Mr. Graham, we're working on that." And Mr. Graham said, "Well, you've been working on it for 60 days. My God, it takes 60 days to go in there, punch that button. No, there, Mr. Graham, you have not been. But it takes us 5-6 months for policy, employee policy. It takes us how much time to allow the judge to make a decision? Is there a KBI investigation? You know, time is in the favor of those who don't want anything accomplished. They want to slow everything down. I don't know why 2 of you don't understand that. Mr. Robinson came in here, his educational background. Some of you may have been impressed. I would probably like him as a gentleman, but I wasn't impressed by his educational background. because I know hundreds of them. And if we haven't learned anything from the Attorney General in Washington and the FBI in Washington and everybody else in Washington, we haven't learned a thing about the judicial. They do the same thing, they just prolong it. I think that you need to start demanding from these, I'm going to continue to call them bureaucrats because they're nothing else but bureaucrats. They're not elected, they work for you guys, and you just go along and tolerate everything they're doing. And I think it's a shame to not only yourselves, but to us, the voters and the taxpayers. We didn't vote Doug in for not being able to make some changes, and because Dennis and Bob created all of our problems, and I mean all of our problems. We have massive problems. We think Washington is bad. It doesn't even compare, because this is 76,000 people. We can't control, we can understand there's 329 million trying to control them, but we only have 76,000 people, and not all of those are adults. He should talk to your attorney if he's going to talk about potential lawsuits. You ever notice how they do that? Now, they can talk about a potential lawsuit, but if you start talking about, whoa, we got a potential lawsuit here, we can't talk about that in open session. It's a vacillating thing for them. I just hope that somebody wakes up on this commission. We're about ready to get sued, probably. I notice it's down to 4. So that must mean, who would that be? Ms. Copeland, the 2 attorneys, and probably the guy over at the shop. Don't know for that for sure. My relationship to where I get my information out in the county said he didn't know for sure, but he thought that was who it was. So that means Mark must have had an agreement with you, and I think that's good, Mark, if you did. Because your performance has greatly improved for not only the county commissioners, but for the county. And I don't say that because I want you to think I love you, okay? I only love you because you're a human being. So, Clyde, it's your responsibility. I haven't put this on you before, but it's your responsibility. If there's a motion made, you're going to have to start seconding it. We've got to clear up this problem. They're going to sue us anyway, so put them out on administrative, fire them. They're going to sue us anyway. And let's get the courts off their dead you-know-whats and come in and say, no, the contracts aren't legal, or let it go to lawsuit because we're going to pay them anyway, and these 2 guys are going to be mad back here because you're going to take money out of their roads and you're going to increase the mill levy, and the rest of us going to be mad, pay for the lawsuits. So let's get it on down the road so you can concentrate on what the business of the county is. This isn't the business of the county. This is the business of 2 people who screwed up the county. And it's a total shame. So I'm approaching you with the respect I've always given you, and I would hope that you start voting to eliminate the problem of Leavenworth County. So, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Klemp. Anyone else from the public wishing to speak? We'll close that portion of our meeting. Commissioners had a chance to look at the minutes.
I have. Motion to approve.
Second.
Voting?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any administrative business this time, Mark?
We do have several items. We have, the first one would be to acknowledge the Employee of the Month.
Commissioners, I would like to introduce Molly Stickelman. She has been with the County Treasurer's Office for just over a year in May. And there's probably not a more appropriate person for Employee of the Month because she has an outstanding production rate and error rate. And she's just been a real asset to the County Treasurer's Office. So she will be the Employee of the Month, parking in the spot.
Well, thank you for coming up, and I'm sorry there's nobody from the newspaper here to take your picture.
Well, we'll just send him down.
All right, we'll send him
He'll stop
down
by,
next
I'm sure.
week. John Richmeier's off today, so.
Oh, okay.
uh,
No
But
problem.
anyway, so that's no better way to reward a first anniversary than
Very
a closed
good.
parking space.
Well, thank you for acknowledging her.
All right, and then we'll send the press down next week. Thank you, it was nice meeting you.
Thank you.
I think the next item would be from the health office.
Morning, Commissioners.
Good morning, Jamie. How are you?
Good. I had the universal contracts from KDHE for the aid to local grants. This is a annual item that has to be done to accept the aid to local grants for the health department. Again, this is nothing new. This is a standard signature, but I need the chairman to sign, give like a copy so I can send that in and accept the aid to local grants. It starts July 1.
Okay, so you need a motion to,
Motion to
Enter into the
enter
contract.
into the contract and have
Aid to
the,
local program universal contract.
Second.
voting.
Aye.
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 Get them signed real quick so Jamie can get out of here.
Just two signatures. Just grab them.
That's at Leavenworth County Health. It's the 29th.
It's just, I'll fill out the rest of it.
All right. Is that all you need?
That's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The next two items are from the sheriff's department, and these were discussed previously during the budget work session.
Yeah.
Morning.
Morning, Sheriff.
First item I have is a renewal of our food service contract for inmates. Basically, it's an adjustment for the CPI. In reality, it raises the cost of each meal about 6 cents. Approximately about approximately 154,000 meals are served each year in the jail, so we are budgeting for that in the FY 2018 budget, so just need a signature from the chairman.
Sheriff, would you repeat how many meals per year?
Approximately 154,000 are prepared in the kitchen.
Lot of
Kind of a
meals.
staggering figure when you think about it. If it's three
Probably.
meals a day, 365 days a
Right.
year.
So you just need a motion for the chairman to sign?
That's correct.
I make a motion that we approve and for the chairman to sign and date.
Second.
Voting.
Aye.
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 Are we allowed to order special meals?
I was gonna say, that might be the best kept secret in town. That's a place to eat like that that has that much.
You gotta be honest, this is too good.
Probably the tips aren't either.
Thank you.
All you need, Sheriff?
One other item. Next item concerns inmate health care within the jail. Since 2008, we have contracted with the inmate health care provider. By and large, the relationship's been favorable. Last year or two, it's declined. I'm not sure what the issue internally is that caused the decline, but we have made several attempts to try to salvage the relationship that we have with Advanced Correctional Health Care. 2015, we renegotiated a new contract, some different terms. All those terms have not been maintained, have not been met by the contracting agency. done some research. I believe that it's favorable for Leavenworth County to terminate the contract. There's a 30-day out clause with Advanced Correctional Health Care. Terminate the contract and provide the service in-house. And by in-house, we would have 2 full-time nurses, 2 part-time nurses for 16 hours a day nursing, which is what we're supposed to be receiving currently and are not. And then contract with the PA to provide medical oversight. We can do this at a savings to the county, about $58,000 a year, less than what we're paying now for a lower level of service. I don't know how detailed you want to go into this, but I can answer any questions you may have regarding this proposal.
If you're happy with it, I'm happy with it. I mean,
When you're saving 58,000,
I'm not gonna question that.
I'm not gonna question that.
This is your deal.
So you need a motion
Well, perhaps it'd be 2 separate motions, or one motion that includes the transition and then taking it from
To in-house.
I think it'd be appropriate to handle it with 2 motions, one to terminate the current agreement and the other one to enter into a new, to enter into.
Molly and
the
Mark
process.
don't see any problem with this.
I've reviewed this extensively with the sheriff. I understand his reasoning. I agree with him. The math adds up, and I think the level of service would be better, which helps also reduce our exposure to potential litigation, because we've already seen instances of that too. So I think this is a good solution.
So you'll need the motion to move forward on the 30-day notice.
So moved.
Question, Sheriff, have you made contact with all the necessary providers to see that they would negotiate a contract with the sheriff?
We have tentative agreements with all the providers I feel are necessary to continue the level of health care we want to provide. They are just simply waiting for contract to be terminated with our current provider.
Well, not questioning you, I just know it is a statutory requirement that the inmates in the jail receive medical care.
That is correct.
And 154,000 meals a year.
I know.
So,
Second.
voting.
Aye.
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 And now we'll need a motion to approve to provide the service in-house.
I think it would be to authorize the sheriff to implement any necessary agreements and changes to move healthcare in-house.
So moved.
Second.
Voting.
Aye.
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 Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Just an update that we have been working with the property owner that has the sunflower farm in the south end of the county, trying to come up with a good plan for handling the increased traffic during his photography season, I'll call it that. Still under discussions. It's going to be a challenge. I'm sure we'll be coming before the board in the future. There is a cost to the county for this, and we want to discuss that in open forum so that everybody understands that. I have reached out to the state and asked them if they have any way to assist us with these kind of things. I'll be discussing it further with them probably over the next week and a half, 2 weeks. But just to let you know that we are working on it. We've had several meetings with KDOT, Kansas Department of Transportation, the Kansas Turnpike Authority, obviously the Sheriff's Department, EMS, the health officer, emergency management services. So just everybody who we can think that would be impacted, we try to have them involved in, including the property.
Does this fall under agritourism?
You know, that's why I reached out to the state, and technically it does not fall under agritourism, because for agritourism there has to be an educational piece, and there is no educational piece going on. So that's something I'm going to be working with the state over again in the next few weeks to see if there's a way they can assist with that, and which would then maybe make available some funds for us to
Right.
assist with it. Yeah, there's just a rough estimate, probably $70,000 to $80,000 a year cost to the county
Mhm.
just to try to handle the increased flow of traffic over a 2 to 3 week period.
Yeah. Maybe the state will kick in some money, being it is a sunflower in the state of Kansas.
Well, we're hoping. But either way, we're still working.
Okay, all right, thank you for the update. Commissioners had a chance to look at the agenda for next week on our 2 meetings on Thursday.
I have. I see no problem. Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Voting?
Aye.
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 All right. Got that out of the way. We ready for planning and zoning then?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
We have 3 plats for you this morning. First one is case number DEV-17-061 and 062, preliminary and final plat for the estates at Cold Creek. The applicant is Ben Robbins with Robbins Acquisition Group, and his agent is Joe Herring. They are requesting a 4-lot plat at the corner of 219th Street and McIntyre Road.
Mm-hmm.
It meets all Leavenworth County subdivision, zoning and subdivision regulations. One thing to make you aware of is that on Lot 1, there is a house that's predating 1976, but is within the 105-foot front setback line. It's about 98 feet from the center line of the road. If this residence is to remain, an exception is required, and that is listed as condition number 6. On this, Rural Water District number 8 has confirmed that there's 3 water lines in the area. A substandard fire hydrant is located at the southwest corner of the intersection. And additionally, emergency management is recommending another fire hydrant be placed 1,000 feet north of that existing one. The Planning Commission voted 7-0 with 2 absent to recommend approval, subject to the 7 conditions. The agent is here today and can answer any questions.
On the fire hydrant, if you said you had a substandard hydrant, what good would it do to put another one out there?
Right, they have a 2, there's a 2.
I mean, it sounds like it's a clean out for a water line more than a hydrant.
Right,
Right.
excuse me. Most likely a clean out on this.
Right.
There's a 2-inch line on McIntyre and a 4-inch line on 219th Street.
And that's neither one of them's gonna support a hydrant.
At least 6 inches.
Yeah. When you're talking about an exception on the current resident, are you talking about going through the variance process?
No, it's
Okay.
listed as a condition number 6. It reads an exception for the existing residents on lot 1 to remain within the required front building setback line is granted for this approval.
Okay.
There are certain exceptions that the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commission can approve, so this is one of them.
Okay. So if the house burns down, we're not gonna have to go through the whole,
Well, if the house burns down, if they want to build another house, they just need to meet the setback.
okay. Okay. Any questions, commissioners, on this? Do we have to have a hearing or anything on this? Just
No.
approve it?
Motion to approve.
Second. Is there anyone from the public wishes?
Guess not. Voting?
Aye.
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 The next plat is case number DEV-17-063 and 064, preliminary and final plat for Reichman Corner. The applicant and property owners are Kevin and Holly Reichman. Again, their agent is Joe Herring. The property owners are requesting a 3-lot subdivision located at 246th and Honey Creek Road. Again, this plat meets the Leavenworth County zoning and subdivision regulations. In regards to water, Rural Water District number 13 has confirmed that water service is available, as there is a 4-inch line and 2 2-inch lines in the vicinity. Currently, they cannot accommodate fire hydrants, but Rural Water District 13 is working to upgrade a nearby line to 6 inches. They've indicated that a fire hydrant would be possible at the corner of 242nd and Honey Creek, which is about 1,300 feet from the proposed subdivision. Again, emergency management recommends a fire hydrant placed at the corner. The planning commission voted 7-0 with 2 absent to approve the preliminary and final plat with the 6 conditions listed below.
Okay. So what happens, say the water district updates the line a year from now, and who pays for the hydrant then? Or
One of our
does-
conditions says, number 5, the applicant shall work with the water district, emergency management, and the fire district regarding the requirements for fire hydrants.
But, I mean, if they don't have a definite date when they're gonna do it, I mean,
There is no way to enforce that.
Right.
Once they get the
So-
6-inch line, then, when they come in for building permits, we can check on that.
Okay.
That's pretty much what we can.
right, so if they sell lots before, then it's,
When they come in for building permits, we can
Okay.
make sure that they have fire hydrants.
so that, okay. All right, we're ready. Any questions on this plat?
Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Motion to
I move
approve.
approval.
Second, voting?
Aye.
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 The third plat is case number DEB-17-065. This is a final plat for replat of Deer Mound. The applicant and property owner is Gerald St. Peter. His agent is Joe Marion of Marion Surveying Company. The property owner is requesting a replat of lots 1 and 2 of Deer Mound subdivision for a 3-lot subdivision. Rural Water District 13 has also confirmed that water service is available as there are several lines and fire hydrants in the near vicinity. Emergency management recommends an additional fire hydrant be placed at the northwest corner of Lot 10. This proposed replat meets all Leavenworth County subdivision and zoning regulations. The Planning Commission voted 7-0 with 2 absent to approve this final plat with the 6 conditions listed below.
Any questions, Commissioner?
No. You say
You take
7-0
up in any
was
way
the
the-
planning and zoning commission.
7-0 with 2 absent. This case was on the consent agenda for the June Planning Commission.
Emergency management recommends an additional fire hydrant. Has that been looked at, or?
There are already 2 fire hydrants.
Yeah, there's hydrants in that area, because this was approved, the original plat, several years ago, wasn't it? And now it's got a different owner.
In 2004, this was.
This is a replat.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
replat.
this is a
I remember,
replat.
because
Yeah,
I remember
do.
when they were doing the original, they were putting big water lines in
Right.
out there then.
Right, so Chuck has recommended an additional one since we're going
Yeah.
from 2 lots and creating a third.
Okay.
Is that a 6-inch line out there?
It's probably bigger than that.
Yeah, they have.
6-inch, which is adequate size for a fire hydrant.
Okay.
And that's why they have fire hydrants now. Motion to approve?
Second.
Voting?
Aye.
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 Are you ready for the?
So, about a month ago, the board, we had a lengthy discussion on non-compliant lots and letters that had previously been issued by staff on how we might address those. The first action that we asked the board to take was to waive the fees for anybody who wanted to apply for a variance that had those letters or the non-compliant lots. The board approved that. We discussed that we were working towards what we believe would be the best resolution for all involved. And what we have before you is a proposed resolution for this board to adopt that would allow that if somebody has a building, a home, on a current non-compliant lot, if that home is destroyed and they come in, we would issue them the building permit. But part of that process they would go before the BZA to request a permanent variance. And again, just to reiterate, a letter or a policy by this board can change. If the board changes. A variance is recorded with that piece of property and therefore then becomes permanent as part of the legal description and goes to the register of deeds. That is legally binding and does not change. And that's why we believe that needs to happen on these lots, and we're trying to make the process as painless as possible for these owners to come in. So the intent is they would get their building permit, they'd be able to go in and start the building process while they were also working through the variance. If for whatever reason, and I think we have two good cases that were just recently came before the BZA of properties with non-compliant lots with buildings, and they granted the variances for those lots. So I think that's a good indication that's the intent. It will go through. It just needs to be done so it's formalized and recorded. But that won't delay their ability to rebuild their homes. And that's, I think, what the board was most concerned with, is that the way things were going right now, they had to get the variance before they could start rebuilding their home, and that could be a 60 to 90-day delay, maybe longer depending on what they need to do. In this case, with this resolution, that would resolve that. They could start the building process like they would right now today, and then they would work towards the variance.
But is there a chance the BZA could deny it at the variance after we go through this?
There's
My
always that
question
chance.
exactly.
I can't speak for the BZA, but however, they would have a valid building permit and would be able to build. It's just, again, basically we're not allowing it to be any worse than it currently is, right? So that's the intent.
Well, I don't think it can be any worse than it currently
Well,
is.
what I mean is that there's already a non-compliant lot with a house on
Right.
it. By issuing the building permit, we're not allowing an additional non-compliant lot. We're just allowing them to continue the status quo, but we want them to get the variance. And I think that the experience has been that the BZA, when these homes have been on there, they have taken into consideration the hardship and has granted the variances that are then recorded and permanent, and from that point forward, that lot is addressed.
Okay.
That's what this resolution allows them to do, and there's no charge as part of that. If for whatever reason the BZA would not issue the variance, we would put a recorded letter on that property stating that it was a non-compliant lot that had been issued a building permit. So that way, going forward, it's recorded. Anybody who comes forward will know that's how it was addressed. Then we have also the lots that are existing non-compliant that have a letter from a staff member that says they're buildable. A similar process here. We would issue a building permit on that lot if somebody came in with it, and we would ask that they go through the variance process. What the concern is that once we issue the building permit, the people may lose the motivation to follow through with getting the variance. And so we're really trying to encourage them to get that, because that's the way that everybody going forward is protected, by getting that variance. Then it's all protected. Board policy, staff change doesn't change that variance. Once it's approved, it's recorded, it's there. And that's what we really want to have accomplished, because we want to fix this once and for all, versus 5 years from now, somebody forgets what's happened and so on. So this resolution allows us to not slow the process down. They can still come in and do what they're needed to do. If they're trying to build, this allows them to start the building process while they're getting the variance. If for whatever reason the variance is not granted, again, we would record the letter with the property that said the building permit was issued on this non-compliant lot on this date, and it's recorded, and so they know how it was handled. I believe, working with the county counselor and the planning and zoning director, this is the appropriate way to handle these. I think it's the least painful way, and it's the easiest for our citizens, which is what our goal was. And it's the going forward, the best legally binding way to handle this. And otherwise, again, without the variance, there's always that problem of the next board may interpret these things differently, or the next planning and zoning director. So with this policy in place, it identifies how we're going to handle it, so it's very clear to everybody. It allows them to proceed with their building without being delayed, and it hopefully will allow them to get the variance that they need to make it a permanent solution.
There is still a little risk involved. I mean, this is a big improvement of what we had, but so basically the purchase price of the lot, you know, if somebody's coming out, it's on the market, they buy this piece of property, yeah, we get a building permit, we spend the almost $8,000 for a building permit and all the fees that go along with it. And then it doesn't become a variance being granted, and now it's a pretty large investment.
They would still be able to build because.
Yeah, they'd still be able to build, but then your large investment may not be worth
But it would
as much.
still be a non-compliant lot.
And then if you look at the way this policy works, once a home is on there, they will in perpetuity be granted building permits. So if something would happen,
Okay.
it basically creates.
Just don't want to devalue anybody's property
I
because
believe
of
this creates
this.
the process where they can.
Okay.
Reading paragraph 2, it pretty well covers that situation,
That's.
I think.
I think that's true, and that was our intent. That, once this process gets started, once they come in and apply for the building permit, which would trigger most of this, or
Okay.
starts the grant process, they are covered.
Mr. Klemp, you had your hand up?
This is all fine. Everything will be resolved. But what happens the next time we get a king?
We got what, Lou?
Get a king or queen. We don't want to be leave the other group out. And they send out a letter. How do we control that portion of it? Without it, I guess, nothing goes out of the county without you going over it and them signing it. That's still out there. Somebody from some department, for who knows what reason, can do that, and we're back in another position of, well, the roads supervisor, he sent out a letter, and he was mad because he didn't get his payoff on his funds or who knows what, and he's mad, so he sent out a letter that everybody's road is entitled to be, and all these people run in and jump ahead of these two guys here, and I'm getting worried about them because they're showing up every meeting. So how do we, is there any way to resolve that portion of it?
Well, yes, Mr. Teal?
My name's Dave Teal, 27192 227th Street, Easton, Kansas. And I guess in listening to Mark there, I guess there's a lot I don't agree with. First of all, and the purpose of how this maybe come to a head was a result of this letter that was issued by Planning and Zoning, and you used the word non-compliant. Well, this person in the position of the Planning and Zoning Director wrote the letter, dealt with the issue of not being, that this lot was basically grandfathered in, and he supported the trail with the deeds showing when it was deeded and everything else. So this is a lot that was deeded many years ago. So in this process, this property changed hands 10 or 12 years ago, and the gentleman bought it, knowing he could build on it, and he went so far as to get a building permit because this property has a numbered address. So therefore, he was able to get a building permit. And he never billed because the cost got more than he wanted to do, so he kept it and now wanted to sell it. When he brought it to me, I said, this doesn't appear to be a buildable lot. And so he said, well, I have a letter supporting that it's buildable, but he couldn't find it. So I asked Planning and Zoning, and they said there wasn't a letter. This was last fall. And so anyway, I said, you better find your letter so you have something to go on. So because these letters do mean something in marketing these properties, and if you think you can sell something that don't have proof it's buildable and it doesn't affect value, then you're sadly mistaken, because that's what values are based on. So this is just farm ground if it's not buildable. So this guy paid a huge price for it, and now for you to tell him it's not buildable, I think there's some serious problems there when it was written on stationery from the Planning and Zoning Department. So, and I guess I would submit, to go on further with that, I asked the new person at Planning and Zoning, and they were able to find the letters. So that's a concern when somebody goes into Planning and Zoning and they say the letter isn't there, and then you go in later and they say it is there. So, I mean, that's kind of a concern when the public is treated that way, me being part of the public, that you couldn't get an honest answer from Planning and Zoning. So, and I guess I would submit to you, planning would be to take care of things in the future. This is trying to take care of what's happened in the past. So, I mean, if I've been marketing property for 30 years in this county, and what we've always based our decisions on the valuation of properties if it's buildable. And so either you have it platted or go through the deal, and we've even had people that have had platted lots that go through the Planning and Zoning under the current laws of the situations, and granted they've changed dramatically in the 30 years I've been doing this, to basically you could do anything to what they are now. So that's why this one was grandfathered in, because this was deeded back without any road frontage. There's another house just to the north of this property, exactly the same as this. So if this house burns down, then these people can't get a building permit because they, you know, based on what I've been hearing. So, so I would submit to you, commissioners, that you would honor all letters that have been there. And basically, if a house has been there, I mean, somebody had to go through the process to get a building permit. I mean, the county's never going to be perfect, and that's, I think, what we're trying to, what Planning and Zoning is trying to accomplish here by saying everything's got to have a variance or some legal track record to do that. And this county's never going to be perfect. There's situations out there that I don't know about, and anybody, and they don't know about until somebody comes out there. So, I mean, and why these people, I mean, when a house burns down, they have a way of taking care of it with this variance, but why do they have to even go through that? I mean, you know, the house was given a building permit many years ago, and just like this letter, he was able to build on it, so I don't know why they have to go through that. And it's not that big of a situation that it's going to affect the integrity of the county, I don't think, because these deals are there. And we should be focusing on trying to grow the county and not making it impossible to keep what we have, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I would submit to you for you to honor these letters and basically honor, and I'm not against variances on properties that need to be done and correct, you know, there's a place for a variance, but I don't know that this is the place. Obviously, it would correct it, but this was a mistake that was done perhaps a long time ago. And so basically what you're saying, this employee of this county made a mistake in issuing this letter, which I would think there would be some liability to the people that bought these lots with this letter in play, because that's, you know, that's what it's all about, is the valuation of the property.
Let me ask a question, ma'am, Molly.
Yes.
Am I reading this second paragraph wrong? Doesn't that cover if someone has a letter issued by a prior planning and zoning director saying the building lot is buildable? It is.
That's correct. The resolution basically says if they come in with a letter,
Yeah.
they can apply,
So
they're
I don't,
entitled to a
I
building
don't see.
permit.
But they still have to
Still
go
want
to the
them to go through
variance
the
process, right?
What, sir?
They still have to go to the variance process, which there is a risk that could be turned down. And if it's turned down and says non-compliant, I mean, it wasn't compliant when this guy got this letter, or he wouldn't, or I assume the planning and zoning guy wouldn't have written a letter. So when is it non-compliant would be the question I would ask you. I understand it's not compliant in today's standards, but in 1980 standards it was compliance, and that's what this letter was based on.
What the paragraph says, unless I'm way off in left field, it says if you have a letter saying this building lot was buildable and you have the letter, it still is.
Well, I haven't seen the
Well, you haven't
document.
probably seen the resolution.
I haven't seen the resolution
Okay.
exactly.
I
Well,
did send it to you.
well, I mean, I did see an email, but I didn't agree. But still, the variance process goes before BZA and all that stuff. So there is a possibility it could be turned down. And so if it's turned down, then where is it at?
Well, Molly,
It is true, it's up to the BZA to grant a variance, but if a variance is not granted, that does not affect the building permit. You are still issued the building permit. So you are still allowed to build.
In effect, what you're asking for is what this resolution accomplishes. And what I've tried to explain multiple times is that this board today could agree with you 100% and say, we're going to honor those letters.
Mhm.
And in 2 years or 3 years or next week, if they change their mind, they can change their mind. By granting a resolution, it gives direction on how to handle it. And by granting a variance, it becomes permanent and it no longer becomes a discussion item. That's why we want these people to go forward and get their variance. If they don't get the variance, this resolution still says that they can build.
Well, you try to market one of those puppies and see how it
But
with one of the,
Mr. Teal,
with
how
all
are you
this,
going
with
to
all this
market
stuff
that
in
property
here.
with an agreement by this board today that says we'll honor those letters?
Well, I mean, we have a letter here, that's what we base it on, that you should be able to get a building
But
permit.
they can change that, that's what I'm trying to tell you, is they can change that policy anytime we have a change in an election, or we have a change in staff, or whatever. That's why you need to get these variances granted, so that it becomes permanent. And in the interim, we've drafted a resolution or a policy of this board that does exactly what you're asking.
Well, what's keeping somebody from coming up with new variance requirements that say that variance isn't required? I mean, that's basically the same thing, that if you get a new board and somebody else that says, well, this variance isn't done, so now you gotta get, so 30 years down the road, you gotta get another variance because the people that wrote this variance didn't know what they were talking about, and that you can't honor it. And like I say, planning and zoning should be dealing with the future planning of the property, not trying to deal with issues that people in the planning and zoning board have given permits for. And it's not that huge of a problem, I don't think, but it creates a great hardship for the people that we're trying to deal with. And I mean, I personally don't own one or anything else, but in representing numerous people through the years, it's a major, some people use their whole life savings to buy a property to build their dream home. And then if you suddenly call it, create hassles down the road, well, I don't know if I want to spend $300,000 building a house that's kind of got, we have a letter saying it's buildable, then you start going through all this other stuff that's saying, the risk that it might, and then even though you can, there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts in there that I don't think are necessary to deal with the issue. Just all you have to do is honor these letters,
And that's what this resolution says we will do. Am I wrong, Mark?
That's exactly.
But you still have to go through the variance process.
I think we have to go through the variance
We're
process
asking- yes,
to
we're
make
asking they
it,
continue
to make
the
it so that
variance
it
process
can't
so
be
that
undone.
That's
Right,
exactly
that's exactly what it is.
We are
I mean,
trying to come forward with a way to address any letters that are out there that says a lot is buildable, even though technically it might not be. We're saying by this resolution, we will honor those letters.
Okay, so they can get a building permit, they can go in and get a building permit and start
Yes.
the process. But then they have to, and they not charge for the variance fee, is that true?
Waive the fees. Yep.
So then, and then what exactly is the variance process that they have to go through?
Mr. Joseph.
They just have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. You have an application process, you just
Mhm.
go through that process. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a 7-member board,
Mhm.
and they look at five criteria, and one of the criteria is hardship. And these two situations actually create a hardship. So that's why the Board of Zoning Appeals actually approved 2 variances last month on similar cases.
Well, yeah, I mean, that all sounds good in theory, but so say the BZA turns it down, then they're able to proceed on.
they can still
There
build.
is that building permit, it's already issued, so you can build the house on that property.
So, but that's a red flag that you can't get insurance and everything, or is that, I mean, if you're on I mean, there's some red flags down the road in marketing and title and everything else that if that's, I don't know, is those issues that would come in play in dealing with the marketing of the property?
Well, the problem is there are situations where these are landlocked parcels, there is no access, there is no frontage.
Well, that's what
So,
this one here is.
ever since the county regulations back in 1962, there's always a frontage requirement. So it's been there since 1962. Its minimum is 30 feet. And most of these properties don't have any frontage. So you already have a situation there. We are trying to make it to where you can build on that property and get a variance where it's permanent record.
Well, according to the owner, he has a building, he's able to get a building because he has a letter, so that's where.
That's what the resolution says.
Well,
This
okay,
formalizes
well,
that.
you know, this guy is a real estate investor that owns this, and he said if, you know, he's gonna sue the county and go that way, and I guess so then the courts can figure out what they're gonna do, because he's did his research and he owns properties in other counties, and he will decide what is right. I mean, I'm not an attorney, but I just know it's very tough. We've been marketing for years that these letters meant something. So in effect, you're saying now they don't. And
No, I think we're saying now they do.
Well, but you still got to go through the variance process. And if you think the BZA is going to give a building permit for this property that's landlocked, which has an easement that was deeded way back a long time ago, that has a paper trail with it from John Zollner, who was a planning and zoning, who was a very rigid planning and zoning director in his time. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've sat in some of those BZA hearings before, and what comes up and everything else, and I guess I'd be surprised if it would be approved.
If it wasn't approved, for whatever reason, if the variance wasn't approved, you're in no worse shape than you are today. You're actually in better shape because you've been allowed a building permit by this resolution.
Well, this guy was already allowed a building permit once because it's got a numbered address.
Which expired.
And so is the people that their houses have burned down and had a building permit once
This
because.
resolves that via a resolution as a policy of this board. That's
I mean,
exactly what we're doing.
Well, I mean, I respectively disagree, but I just think that, you know, they should be totally honored without going through, you know, in the same way with people's houses that burned down. Obviously, they've been paying taxes and somebody got a building permit, I assume, at some point in time, or, you know, if it was a 100-year-old house, you know, they've still been paying taxes on it, and maybe it was on what is considered a current non-compliant lot, but when that house was built, it was obviously compliant. So, I mean, that's what the word keeps saying, non-compliant. Well, it's not compliant by today's standards, but when these letters were issued, they were compliant, so there shouldn't even be an issue.
Right.
If those letters were issued, they were compliant at that time, and I think that's the key word. They're not compliant by today's standards, but if this letter was issued, they were compliant by those standards, so therefore they should be buildable.
And this resolution is saying we will honor
Well, but
those
you still got to
letters.
go through, the variance.
But it's a step toward what you want to accomplish, and we're trying to do it.
Well, and I understand that to a degree. I just want you to honor the letters and, like, you know, without going through, we're putting people that have bought properties, which isn't a great amount of people, and planning and zoning focus on planning in the future and not worry and honor what their predecessors have done in the past, which, you know, if somebody's house burns down, obviously they were given, the house was there, so they were given a building permit, so why it should be forever that you could build on that place, even though it's non-compliant, without having to go through the variance process. Because that's what triggered, he said, what triggers the deal, the variance process is the non-compliant issue. Well, my argument is this was compliant when this letter was written or when these houses were built, so therefore it shouldn't have to trigger the variance process. I mean, that's just my opinion. And I just think, you know, from a marketing standpoint, this keeps it as clean as possible. If people start reading all this other stuff, do they want to buy and get into something like that? If you own one of these houses out there that are marketed with, and there are others out there, and people don't know they're that way innocently because no one ever told them they were that way, and or that, you know, they're 100 years old and there's no reason. I just think you just need to honor those properties. And it's not a huge, you know, it's not like there are hundreds and thousands of them all over the county. I mean, I'm totally for planning and the correct process in the future, but I just think the county needs to stand behind what was done in the past, and that's what I'm, you know, and I understand, Clyde, what you're saying, that this does take care of it to a degree but there's still some gray areas to it that, you know, I can't imagine like this property, the BZA would approve it. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I just can't imagine they will do that. But, and I don't think the person should have to go through, and it's still buildable, but you got that other gray cloud hanging over you, where this here is just, it is what it is. Well, thank you for.
But if over 50% of it was destroyed after it's been determined by the BZA, they wouldn't be able to rebuild back, correct?
That's not correct.
That's not correct.
Under
Well,
this
Under this resolution, once the house is built, they can rebuild.
okay, so it'll just have something in the parcel file that says that it's a non-compliant lot, but it'll always be buildable,
Only if the variance was denied.
only if the variance is denied. But if the variance is approved, it's good for life. Well,
So if the variance is denied, then it burns down again, then they can't.
They can still rebuild.
They can still rebuild. So what is the purpose of jumping through all these hoops? What does that accomplish?
Just government at its finest.
Just more government red tape and more take up everybody's time to accomplish
To
nothing?
protect
It's
the
really to
owners.
protect the citizens, because a future board could change the policy, and that's what we're trying to.
Well, and it most likely will, but
This board has got it this far, it changes it.
I was gonna say, we got it
We're
this far.
changing it, so maybe future boards will change it better
Uh-huh.
in the future.
But,
But right now, probably this is the best we can do, Dave.
all right,
But
thank you.
we'll cover it. Mr. Herring first.
Mr. Herring.
Yeah, but we haven't heard from him yet.
So nice of you to come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Clement. Joe Herring, Herring Serving 315 North Fifth. Just some clarifications. Houses out there, it's on a non-compliant track, it's good, basically, is what we're saying. I get that. I do feel that if the BZA does not approve it, it will devalue the property if that letter's in there, but that's just, I think it's gonna be a rare case.
I bet we'll lower the taxes on it too.
Well, hopefully. I do have concerns, something we haven't talked about, this is good for a building permit. But let's say I have a tract of ground that I purchased 5 years ago, I have the letter, says that it's buildable, let's say 10 years ago, let's get outside of current planners. But I never built on it, and I don't plan on build on it, but I wanna sell it. Now, the lender is requesting a status of parcel letter. Can I bring that letter in on a tract, not to get a building permit, but to get a status of parcel letter that states this tract is entitled to a building permit?
The status of parcel letter will show this resolution.
Show that resolution. And can we get it to where it doesn't say 18 months? Because when you buy property for investments,
There's
You're
nothing
not-
in here.
well,
I
we
was gonna
received
say, I
this.
don't think it's in here.
The resolution doesn't.
That's not part of the resolution.
No.
The last resolution is a permanent resolution of this board unless appealed.
So it won't have a time frame on it.
The status of parcel letters that have an expiration date on them are because of the issues that we're running into right now.
Right.
Which is, somebody issued them 15 years ago, and now they're coming back in with the same letter and not following up to see, is this still good, is this, so that's why they have an expiration.
And that is one
Status
of my
parcel.
concerns, and then maybe that's another meeting, another talk, that we can sit down and talk about, the timeframe on current status of parcel letters.
Sure.
But as long as you can come in and get a status of parcel letter, not just for a building permit, but for to be able to sell your parcel, then that was my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Klemp, you got a comment?
Yes, I was so glad to see Joe come up. I like to see the youth of the day getting involved in life. You know, I was listening to David, and of course, he hadn't been here at all the meetings where all this is going on. And
I bet he's watched us, so.
no, a lot of these meetings went on way before.
Oh.
And David had got time to watch these meetings. He may not be able to where he lives. But, you know, it's amazing Leavenworth High, during summer you get food, breakfast, you can get lunch. Now, Dave said this was an investor. I got, if you're an investor, you better learn how to do your homework. Maybe he needs to be in business first. Then you know how to do your homework. Because there are a lot of things that you run into that, oh, I didn't know that. Well, you didn't look into it. Now you followed up, Joe did about the, going to the banker. Now that's following up, that's getting, I'm gonna sell a piece of property to Jeff, and Jeff's gonna say, I'll be back to you in a week or two, and I'll let you know. And that's where he goes out and does his homework. He comes down to the Register of Deeds. They do good work down there. Probably, maybe I shouldn't compliment them, but they do good work. And then they go to somebody else that does some research, and now they're satisfied. But people have to learn that they got to do their own homework. We're not feeding kids at school because their parents don't feed them or can't feed them. We are adults over 21, and we have to learn how to do our homework. If we're going to invest $300,000, or we're going to invest $500,000, we're going to invest $1. You better do your homework. Now, my question wasn't answered. And the question was, how do we resolve this in the future for some loose cannon here, sending out a letter without the authority to do so? You just can't put out a standard statement. Nobody has the authority to send out a standard letter unless it's signed by the commission. That ain't gonna work. There has to be some way that, Jeff doesn't get into that position. He knows not to do that now, see, because he's already had a lot going on in his life. But there has to be some way that can be controlled, because the planning and zoning director was not elected by any of us. We didn't elect him. But he took it on his own to say it's buildable. And he shouldn't have done that. So how do we stop that? And that may take some research, Mark.
Well, I think one of the things is the letters are within the scope of the duties of the planning and zoning director. The issue is, was the proper research done by the employee? So maybe a mistake was made on the letters, maybe it wasn't. But during the course of their daily duties, certain staff members have to put forward letters of.
They have to make decisions.
That's just part of their job.
That's part of their job. That's why we hire
If a mistake is
them.
made, it is, to an extent, we do have to live up to those and honor those letters, which is what we're trying to do. And it could be in any situation where, maybe somebody sends something out that has an error in it. Well, that's one of the reasons why we put the 18-month limit on these letters, and that is, okay, well, we've made a mistake. We have to look at that mistake for the next 18 months, which is the same amount of time a building permit is good for, actually. That's why we use that, correct?
1 year.
Okay, so we use give a little bit more time because of the process. And I'm not an attorney, so if I say anything wrong, I'm sure Molly will reach over and correct this, but an employee can't bind an employer if they don't legally have the ability to do that. So if Jeff issued a letter to somebody that said that they could do something that wasn't even in the scope of his job, that's not a legally binding letter if we had to go to court to defend it. Jeff made a mistake, he shouldn't have done that if that was the case, and I'm sorry for using Jeff, but he's here. So now, we would have to go to court to defend our position in that case. And if it was egregious, we would definitely do that. In this case, it's not an egregious act. These letters were issued, whether we believe they were in error or not. We understand there's maybe 30, 40 of them out there, and maybe 15 to 20 of them will ever come in or have already been addressed. So that's kind of the point on these. Let's get through these, and then in the future, we put this expiration date on these letters so that 15 years from now, the new planning and zoning director, the new board of county commissioners, the new county administrator isn't dealing with it, because it clearly says 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to come in and reapply. And that's what we're trying to do to address it. But that's, again, best we're trying to do the best we can with what we have.
And I do agree with you, Mr. Klemp, on personal responsibility, checking out a property, because there's properties out there that are in benefit districts, special assessments, stuff like that. I mean, it's very important you do your research.
Well, that's what your real estate agent is for, that's representing you.
Well, still, you should do it yourself also. Yes, sir, Mr. Teal.
Well, I mean, you know, you bring that up. Well, this guy, he did do his research. He got a letter from planning and zoning say it was buildable.
Right.
And on that letter, it showed the deed history of the property, and it was written to a member of the Brewer family in Baser who are very astute did a lot of development in the Baser area. So if it was written to him, I mean, how much more homework could he do? I mean, I wasn't involved.
Well, no,
in that.
I agree with the letter, because it doesn't say it has an expiration date. It doesn't say,
Right, I mean,
it
there's
doesn't
nothing on
comply, if
there
it-
to
this
say-
letter, you know, future be in compliance with future regulations or anything like that. I mean, to
So
me,
you're
if
saying-
I had one of them letters, I would think it's buildable. Absolutely. If it's on county lettering, I would think it's buildable. And I guess with this resolution, it is. So.
So now the letters only have an 18-month?
No. This will be, they're good. They're
That's new.
good. They're good as long as the paper will last.
But I mean, I heard somebody say their letters are just 18 months.
That's the new letter.
Yeah, the new letters.
If Jeff would send one out, you mean?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So are plats and stuff like that just good for 18 months, or?
No.
No.
Plats are fine.
Plats are different.
Plats are fine. Like I said, I think it's the best we can do today. So is that a motion?
That's my motion.
Okay.
Resolution.
Second.
Need a resolution.
38.
How,
38.
2017-38.
Voting.
Aye.
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 Anything else, Mark?
I do have a request for an executive session for 10 minutes.
Okay, all right. I'll move to recess into executive session for 10 minutes pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under KSA 75-4319B1 to discuss possible personnel actions involving county employees. The meeting will resume at 10:10 or 10:20 in this room. The following persons to be in attendance would be the 3 commissioners and Mark Lawfrey, administrator. I need a second.
Second.
Voting.
Aye.
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 Will you use your office, Mark?
Yep.
Let the record reflect that the governing body reconvened into the regular meeting at 10:20. No votes were taken or decisions made during the executive session. The discussion was limited to the subject stated. Yes, sir.
I was talking earlier about the bureaucracy.
Yes, sir.
We had 21 days on one report, don't know where it is. We had KBI investigation. Nobody's ever reported on that, and I thought somebody was gonna write a letter. Are we under a KBI investigation?
Not that I'm aware of. I haven't had an official.
Okay, so, and the 21 days was to have the judge, wasn't it? Have the judge.
That's a court deal. I mean, we
Yeah,
have no
court.
control over that.
Well, but
To
is the 21
respond to
days
or-
gone, but you got control. Is the 21 days gone by?
I'd have
No.
not quite.
Can somebody find out the answer to that?
I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah,
Yes,
I don't
can.
mean today, you got more important things to talk about, but we've got to cut this, you know? We just keep extending. This is a county of 76,000 people, 720 miles of road, or what it is.
765.
765, God dang it. And there used to be, I don't know how many,
145 superstructure bridges, 313 culverts.
Ooh. Yeah, but let's get the, I think it was the county counselor was gonna find out if we were under.
I believe she hasn't heard anything.
Right. I think you asked that on Monday, and the response was we had
Right, have
we
not
got
heard
no
anything.
response from the KBI.
Did we give them a time limit, or we're gonna cut them off?
We asked for a response that they did not provide a response.
So there is nothing to do with the KPI. So we don't care about it, do we? They don't care about us.
To the best of our knowledge.
As far as we're concerned,
Okay, so we're just waiting for the, what are we gonna do when the 21 days goes by?
it's out of our hands. I believe the courts will set a date.
Well, but if they don't set a date, they got 21 days to make a decision, set a date.
That'd be up to our legal
But
counsel.
the other parties then have the right to come in and answer, which can make that time longer. Isn't
Well,
that
that's
right,
what I'm-
Molly?
That's
but
correct.
the
That's under the Kansas
Yeah.
Rules of Civil Procedure.
Rules
They-
of civil procedure, we have filed our action, we are waiting now for the court to act.
And if the court doesn't act, we can change our action, can we not? We have 3 foxes in the hen house that have a conflict of interest. Do you not understand? Is there not one of you that understands conflict of interest? You have 2 attorneys and you have a human resource person. Conflict of interest. Now, I guess Mark removed himself from that. And if you did, I'm proud of you. But for some reason, oh, but all that goes on in executive session, so I don't know that. But we have a conflict of interest with the 3 ladies who are suing or going to sue the county, because that's the way it's going to happen. So if we don't hear the KBIs out, the courts don't come back with an answer. You know, look at the courts. I don't know if any of you have been on the jury. 90, and I bet you there's 85% of it that is settled outside. And the judge will walk out and say it's been settled outside between counsel, defense, and a prosecutor. You know, it's totally ridiculous. And yet we're paying the bill because time limits aren't set. Time limits aren't set. We draw a line, you know, and the line doesn't mean anything. So I appreciate some follow through without saying there's nothing we can do. Yes, there's things we can do. We can pay them administratively. We can fire them. And nobody's willing to do that. And we're going to have to pay the tab no matter what. We're going to be responsible for the tab. And I think that's unfair because we're not taking an action. If we know the action and we have to pay the tab, that's fine. But if we keep drifting along, you don't realize how much you're disturbing the county, disturbance out in the county. And it's a shame they can't come through and have the same rule as that was imposed about, yeah, you can, I call it the squealer rule. And I think there ought to be a rule. You ought to be able to tell on somebody and not lose your job, but you shouldn't be able to tell on somebody and keep it, get a job. So you guys need to do something. I mean, you're all handsome and pretty and all that, but
Mr. Clem, not arguing with you, we have done what I feel we can do at this time. We have filed an action in county court. It is now in the hands of the court. That gives the opposite side the opportunity to answer.
okay.
They get a time that they have to answer. That has not run yet.
But there is something you can do. You can go say, we want it out of the courts. We want it out, we're taking our action out, and you 4 people are fired. And you let them take it to court. Oh, I didn't think of that.
Well,
No, we just keep drifting along, out here in La La Land.
thank you, Mr. Clem.
Yes.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Voting, aye.
Aye.
Aye.